think everything's good. The chat is hopping. It's been hopping for quite some time, it looks like. Just waiting for the feed to catch up over here so I can mute the audio, but still keep an eye on the chat. Starting in just a few moments, in theory. Everything's good. The chat is hopping. It's been hopping from there. Okay. All set. Hope everybody's having a good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. It's morning here. It's Sunday, the 31st of July, last day of the month. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope the weather is okay where you are. It's been pretty hot and humid and nasty around here for the last week and a half. And then yesterday was nearly perfect. Like, just, nice breezes, not humid, warm-ish, but not too warm. It was lovely. No raining or anything like that. It was great. So did a little bit of grilling out in the evening, and I did a bunch of terrain work yesterday. I've been working on my Baleful Realm gates. You probably, if you've been following the social stuff at all, I've been working on those a little bit. I should put some pictures on Facebook and whatnot last weekend. Did a bunch more work to them yesterday, so they're getting close to being done. So that'll be cool. I'll put more pictures. I'll put pictures on the Paint Club, the Paint Showcase Club, when they're done, and such. Belgium, Northern Germany, Queensland, Australia. Secrets of the Machine says it gets hot in Wisconsin. Yeah, that's kind of the neat thing that we get, is that in any given year, the temperature from winter to summer can change in Fahrenheit as much as 150 degrees. So that's kind of cool. I do remember, hasn't happened in a while, but I do remember. That's in case you're wondering, that's our cat throwing up. He's been puking a bunch lately. That was what that noise was off in the distance. Anyway, yeah. So in Wisconsin, one year that was a high of 101 during the summer and a low of negative 50. So that's 150 degrees. So yeah, we do get some heat and definitely some humidity. Oh, no, not on me, dude. Seriously. Ugh. No, Diesel, don't throw up. Here, watch out. Get out of the... Okay. Technical difficulties. He nearly threw up on the power strip, so that would have been bad. We don't need that. Oregon and Scotland and Portland and Bristol and Louisiana. It gets really hot in Louisiana. Turkey, I see that. DC, neat. Copenhagen, Denmark. There was a question from Tristan. Hey, Adam, have you participated in the summer campaign? I haven't. My local game store that I like to go to is technically not a GW store. Like, they're not they don't get the GW stuff. So therefore we can't play there and have them be, registered and stuff like that. There's a couple of stores nearby, but one's up in Appleton, and I don't have a tendency to. Sometimes I play up there, but I haven't played in a while. So I'm thinking about going up there. But yeah, I've been thinking about doing that. So yeah. Poland, Indonesia, Sweden, New York, Paris, France, Missouri. Yeah, it's 96 in Missouri. Yeah, it's going to get a little warmer this week, but yesterday was lovely, and so that's really nice. I'm glad that it's been good. Yesterday was, like I said, really nice. But what I should have done is I should have pushed harder on the terrain stuff that I was working on and get it done, and then spray it with the sealant and stuff like that, so that it would have, so that it because it was so nice and not humid. I'm sure you don't want to put clear sealant on a humid day, because it will fog up and look weird. So there's a tip. Don't do it on a humid day. All right, so Melanie Dawn says it's been in the hundreds here. Are you, Melanie, are you down in the southern part of America or someplace else? Because, yeah, it's been really hot this summer so far in America. But, yeah. Anthony says, I love your vids. Well, thank you very much. What do you think of Skaven split into different clans for the alliance system? Well, I mean, with the new keywords and stuff like that in the Age of Sigmar, I mean, you've got... I don't know. I don't mind the different clans. I mean, you see it in a bunch of different things. Like in the Death Alliance, you have, you've got the... Oh, what is it? You've got like the more bone guys, the Bone Rattle clan or whatever it's called, and then you have the Flesh Eater courts and stuff like that. So they're kind of spreading them all out, but you can still obviously use them together, so that's fine. Oh, Central California, yeah. And it's very humid over in Korea as well. But yeah, so, there's the normal Skaven, and then there's the kind of Nurgle Pestilence ones, and then there's a whole bunch of other ones. Sluggaboy says Scryer, Molder, Eshin. But yeah, so you can use them, and obviously put them together. I think I don't know, the reason they do that, though, partially is, I think, to get you get bonuses for sort of putting your stuff together and kind of keeping tighter cohesion, but you can still play with, like I do, kind of mixing all kinds of weird stuff up. Joshua asks, what sealant do you use? I generally use Tester's Dull Coat. So Tester's is if you grew up painting models and like model airplanes, model cars, Tester's made those little kind of squarish glass jars, and they were filled with enamels, which you should not use on your normal models for tabletop wargaming. But that's the same company, and they make this stuff called Tester's Dull Coat. And it's really good stuff. It's the flattest kind of spray that I've found so far. The downside is that I don't know that it's available in Europe right now due to being poisonous or something. There's some sort of issue. Don't spray it in the house. I don't care where you live. Just don't spray it in the house. Even if you have a big house and you don't mind the smell, just don't do it. Do it outside. Which is why I generally don't do a lot of sealing in the winter, because I can't do it outside, and I'm not doing it in the house. But Tester's Dull Coat is it's like my favorite, because it's so crazy flat when you're done, as long as you do it right, and it's not too humid. I've never had it fog on me yet, knocking on wood. But yeah, hello from Ibiza. Oh, nice. And Greece and Denmark. Is the GW Purity Seal any good? I have never used it. I use the brush on, I think they call it Ard Coat. I use that if I want a gloss on certain parts, which with Nurgle is always cool because you can... Got something in my throat, hang on. All right, that's better. So with Nurgle, a lot of times, what I do is I spray them with the Tester's Dull Coat, get it all nice and matte. And then I go back with a brush and the Ard Coat or whatever kind of gloss sealant, or varnish that you might want to use, and then I paint it on like the guts hanging out and the open wounds and all that kind of stuff, because then it makes them look wet. So it looks like your Nurgle guy is mostly dry, but he's got like wet, icky parts here and there and that stuff. So that I use it for that. I have also used it. I've used Ard Coat to lay down gloss on like the side of a tank, then put my decals down over the gloss, because decals look best when they're over gloss versus when they're over matte, like a flat surface or like a matte surface. You'll get little tiny air bubbles underneath, or it'll get kind of cloudy. But if you give it a nice shiny layer to stick those decals to, they stay a lot better. And then you go back over it after it's dried a bit and you put more gloss over it again. Then you spray the whole tank with like a dull coat, and then you can barely see that there's a decal there. So, but I have not used the GW sealants, and I know a lot of people are a little meh about the GW sealants. There's a lot of sealants out there that I wouldn't use. You can go to like, your local Walmart and get some Valspar, like, oh, this is a matte, clear varnish. Those stink. First of all, they're almost never actually matte. They're like matte-ish or something, but not even. So yeah, I personally am a big fan of the Tester's Dull Coat. I think it's the best one out there. I have some other ones that I can spray through an airbrush, but I have not done any testing with them yet, and I've been thinking about it. I want to do a video kind of putting like Vallejo matte varnish through an airbrush in comparison to a couple others and just kind of see. But the problem I'm having is I'm trying to figure out like what the good control test is. You know, like what am I trying to make matte? So I either need to find something that's already shiny, like, and they're all the equal amount of shiny, or else I need to make a bunch of models and then somehow equally make them shiny so that it's not, you know, so it's more fair, I guess, is basically what I'm looking for. I've recently purchased some mounted plastic units off of eBay. I want to repaint them, but wanted to remove the riders from the saddles. What's the best method to break the CA glue bond? I find, honestly, one of the best ways to break the CA glue bond is to throw the whole thing into, like, Simple Green or Super Clean or some kind of stripping agent and strip all the paint off, and then more often than not, the glue will also kind of come apart as well, CA glue, especially with Simple Green and Super Clean. And then you go back and repaint the whole thing. The problem is that, like, if you just want to just pull those guys off but not repaint everything, that's going to be really difficult. There's not a great way to do that. There are debonders, CA glue debonders, but they're basically almost like acetone. When you smell them, they smell like the stuff that you take fingernail polish off with, and so that's going to mess up with a whole bunch. That you're going to mess up your paints a bit, you know. So it's, yeah. So in my opinion, you're best almost stripping them all off together and then putting them back together and painting them, going all through that stuff. Yeah. Let's see here. Vallejo matte varnish is still fairly glossy. Yeah, I've kind of heard that too. I've also heard, and this is weird, but I've heard that any matte varnish will be glossy if you use too much of it. So, like, if you spray too much testers, it will get glossy as you add in too many layers. So if you're trying to actually protect, like if you're trying to make models that you're going to let people at conventions handle, because you're going to be doing demos of a game, and you're concerned about them chipping them or getting Cheetos all over them or whatever, then your best bet is to go by and just gloss them hard, and then go back and try to, over the top of the gloss, do the matte varnish. But if you're doing it for just yourself, like I want to seal it so that I don't get too many finger oils on it and stuff like that, but I don't want to go super hardcore, then I just usually go with a matte varnish over the top of the paint. But if you're really trying to protect the paint because you know other people are going to be handling these models, then I'd do a gloss and then cover that gloss with matte, because then you get kind of 2 layers. Doing 2 layers of matte, I don't know if that's a good idea or not. The other thing is about testers. The downside to testers is it comes in a tiny little spray can, and it's usually about $5. So it's not the most expensive stuff in the world, but for how much you get, it's not cheap. I generally have a tendency to go to Hobby Lobby here in America, because they have a 40% off coupon any one thing that's already not on sale, and it's on their website. So you can just basically show them your phone with the page, they punch in the number at checkout, and then they give you 40% off your $5 purchase, which is still, you know, it's good. So you just, and the thing is, they don't ever keep much of it in stock. So there are days that I go to the store to buy dull coat and they just don't have any. I mean, they at most usually keep like 3 cans in stock, so that's kind of a downside. Anyway, that's kind of the trick. Let me see here. What else we got here? Looking at some of the things. Salutations from Chicago. First time catching you live. Just started the hobby. 40k is the best. Is the game. Tau is the name. Getting ready to try my hand at painting. My first 40k army was Tau as well, and they're not super difficult to paint. So if you're concerned about that, it's a good army to start with. Honestly, I used like a red oxide auto primer that I got from the auto parts store, which is a dark red, almost maroon. Sprayed them completely, and then I took like an orange kind of paint for models, you know, but still in a spray can, and dusted them from above, and then it gave them sort of a nice, like, lights hitting them from the top and kind of fading down from orange to red, and then I just did detailing, you know, like the boots are brown, and, you know, some silver bits and some, you know, wash, and that's pretty much about it. They work out pretty well. Yeah, so Tau are not super difficult to paint. Let's see here. Let me scroll down a little bit here. Hello from Utah. Josh McCarthy, do they make a large square jar of dull coat for airbrush? I guess you could brush it. But it's solvent based, like the aerosol can. But yeah, I have seen the big weird glass squarish jar of dull coat, and it from what I understand, people use it through their airbrush. That being said, I would still probably really want to do it outside, and I don't know that I'd be able to take. I guess I could take my airbrush outside, but I don't know. I'm nervous about that stuff. And you're right, it is. It's a solvent base, so it's not like it's water based. So then you'd have to have this stuff to clean it and to clean out your airbrush. I have not gotten to that point yet. I mean, I have a second like cheap airbrush that my idea is that that's what I do my, my spray coats and things like that in, like for varnishing and whatnot. I don't want to use my good. It's not that great. It's an okay airbrush. It's a Iwata Eclipse. HPCS or whatever. So that's my main airbrush, and I don't want to use that one and get it clogged with potentially, solvent-based varnishes or whatever. So that's why I have that cheap one too. But yeah, I just haven't tried that stuff, but I've seen it at the store and I've wondered about it. From what I understand, that stuff is even flatter than the aerosol can of Tester's dull coat, but I haven't tried it out yet. So. I have not tried brushing it. I did used to use a brush on matte varnish that I liked pretty well that was made by Winsor & Newton. I think it's called Galleria matte varnish. And that is you get at your art supply store. That's not designed for models at all. It's designed for, paintings and fine art stuff. But it worked out pretty well, honestly. So you might want to look into that. I mean, who knows? I haven't used it in probably 5-6 years, so maybe the formula has changed, but hopefully not. So let's see here. What's my opinion on Malifaux sculpts? I really like Malifaux sculpts. Like when I first started playing Malifaux, they were all still metal, they were all still hand sculpted, and they were okay. They're not too bad. But now that they've switched to plastics and they're doing them all in 3D modeling, they're super dynamic. They're really cool. Now, that being said, they are designed for advanced modelers to some degree. Like, there are a lot of little tiny parts in some of those situations, and a lot of them can be kind of a pain to build. And also, and people sometimes don't think about this, some of them are really difficult to transport, because they're not like when you're playing like 40K or even Age of Sigmar, a lot of your models, if you've got like a foam, like a battle foam or KR multicase or whoever, and you can just put them in those little slots that you have, to carry your stuff around in. A lot of the Malifaux guys will not fit in those little slots. They are crazy shaped. Like there's a Ten Thunders character, I can't think of his name, but he's got like a bow staff, and he's holding on to the end of it, and he's bringing it down on the ground, like smashing up like wood planks and stuff like that. And the model, like the bow staff is coming down and hitting the base, and the guy is holding on to it, and he's like literally up in the air. So first of all, he tips over a lot sometimes. So you gotta put like a nickel or some green stuff or something in the base. But also, he's really hard to put into a case. You have to like cut out extra foam and do all kinds of stuff. So there are upsides and downsides, but they do look amazing. They've really done. I think everyone for years has always said, "Oh, Games Workshop makes the best models in the industry." Well, yeah, they did certainly. I would say Malifaux is really it's hot on their heels. They're really doing some amazing work. GW still does some amazing stuff, especially in Age of Sigmar lately. But I would say Malifaux is really stepping up their game so much. Weird Games is the company that makes Malifaux. But yeah, they're really stepping up their game. So. What's your thoughts for the Nurgle army? What about the Nurgle army? Let's see here. The Solo Wargaming Show. Hello from your neighbors in Michigan. Hello. Hey, Adam, do you set monthly painting goals? I don't. I probably ought to do so. I have a tendency to generally kind of like just get... There are times when I've really got like a lot of interest in painting and I really start powering through stuff, and then there's other times where... And it's not happened as much lately, but there are times when I'm not. What I've been doing lately is if all of a sudden I'm just like not in the mood to paint, then I work on building. And if I'm not in the mood, hopefully eventually I will get to a point where I've got enough building stuff built that now I'm like, well, I've got all this stuff. I really want to start painting it. You know what I mean? I was kind of in a building mode for quite some time, and which is when I started to. That's when I started to do a lot of the Death Army stuff. You know, I bought these used skeletons from a friend of mine, and they were all on square bases, so I knocked them all off the square bases, put them on round bases, and then I had to go through and texture them all. So we're talking about 50 to 60 skeletons, and then I have primed them all with the Krylon like tan color camo paint, so it's a prime and base coat. So they're all ready to go, and then I was like, well, and then I started working on terrain. So it's good whenever you start to look at it as a job or as a task that you're like, oh man, I got to do this and I'm not looking forward to it, then you need to switch gears. You need to go, well, all right, I'm not looking at doing this right now, but I am interested. I'll work on these terrain pieces, because you get them out of the way at least, and then that's good. You're making progress. If you're just pushing through a single thing and it becomes a task and it becomes work, it slows you down. It makes you go, well, I'll work on it tomorrow night. You know what I mean? So it's best, I think, to kind of like, you know, think about, okay, I'm starting to get annoyed with this, or I'm not looking forward to do this, do something else that's also hobby related. Like with me, I built and painted the Dreadstone Blight, which I showed last week a little bit, those ruins from Lord of the Rings, and last night I was working on the Baleful Realm Gates. They're nearly done, and then I've got that janky Ophidian archway, which is really super warped, and I need to do a bunch of green stuff work to it to make it so that the pieces don't look stupid. And then I'll paint that probably next. But that one actually, I don't know, I'm not sure. I might start working on some other Death Army stuff first before I go back to that piece of terrain. I might get the Realm Gates finished and then start working on some skeletons, or start working on some heroes for the Death Army or something like that. I showed off those heroes from the Death Army, I don't know, 2-3 episodes ago. There was the White King, there was the Tomb Banshee, and then there was Krell, the Lord of Undeath, or whatever his name was. And yeah, so those guys, those death guys are pretty cool. So let's see. Hey Adam, what do you think of the Shattered Dominion tiles for Age of Sigmar? I think it's, I don't know. I've seen them, and I own a Realm of Battle board. I bought it with birthday money years and years and years ago. Gosh, I probably bought that Realm of Battle board 8 years ago, maybe more. And then when we bought this house almost 6 years ago, and I finally had like a place to set it up and a table and the whole deal, then I went out and I painted my Realm of Battle board. And again, and it sounds like I work for Krylon, but I really don't, I swear to God. But I used the Krylon like desert color camo paint because it sticks to that Realm of Battle board really good, the plastic. So I painted it, and then I painted the rocks and did a bunch of other stuff and whatnot, and then sealed everything, used like 2 cans of testers. So that's been my main battle board for quite some time. I'm starting to switch a little bit more to the flatter, like almost like mouse pad type material, the neoprene fat mats from Table War / Frontline Gaming, just because they're great to be able to carry around easily. And the thing about those Realm Battle boards is that when you put models on the edges of those hills, because they're plastic, they have a tendency to sort of slide. They sort of ski downhill sometimes, if you're lucky, or they tip over, which is bad. So the ones that I've seen for Age of Sigmar are neat. They're crazy expensive. That board is way more expensive than when I bought the Realm of Battle. I mean, the Realm of Battle board now is more expensive by a lot than when I bought it that long ago. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I would get any. It's nice that they're selling them in parts too, from what I understand. You can buy just specific tiles, so that if you've already got a battle board, you could, like a Realm of Battle board, I could like bring in some other parts of it, and I think they should match pretty well. But that's the one thing I don't know, is how well they match together. Like if you could just bring in like 2 tiles for that new board and slide it into my current Realm of Battle board, whether they would work or not. But I'll have to look into that. So how often do I go to Games Workshop? I mean, like the stores? We only have 2 here in the entire state of Wisconsin, and the closest one is nearly 2 hours away. So I don't go to Games Workshop at all, as it turns out. Yeah. So yeah, no, like I've been there. Used to be one down here in the Chicago area called the Battle Bunker that was really cool that I stopped at one time. We were down there for a wedding. That was really neat. And I stopped in one in a mall somewhere, but I don't remember where it was. And then there's one in Milwaukee area that I don't know that I've ever been in. And then there's one in Racine that I drove by one time, but they were closed because it was like a Sunday. We were actually on our way back from I think Gen Con, so it was like Sunday evening and they were closed. But yeah, I've never really been much in one because we just don't have them around in America as much as like in the UK. They're everywhere from what I understand, and around here they're not, at least not in where I live. So yeah. I'm currently making some stone blocks from pluck foam, coating them in baby powder and PVA glue, going to look good with a quick paint job. I'm thinking Egyptian pyramid. That'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how rigid they are. Like when you put CA glue into a foam, it gets really rigid, but it depends on the foam though. So, but yeah, that'll be interesting. Let's see here. Do they have Warhammer Fest in other countries? They used to. They used to have something called Games Day, and that was there was 3 of them in America. There was one in Baltimore, one in Chicago, and one in I think L.A. And then over the years they've reduced it down to there was just one in Chicago, which is like the middle of the country, and then eventually they moved it to Memphis or Nashville, Memphis I think, because that's where their national headquarters in America is, and it was just easier for them. And then in 2013 was the last one. They just stopped doing it in America, and I think there's the only Warhammer. Well, they don't call it Games Day anymore. Now it's just called Warhammer Fest, and it's only in the UK. So yeah, I don't know. I never got a chance to go because my job at the time, we always had a big event that happened almost always the same week, so I could never go when it was in Chicago. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they'll start to bring it back, but yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's maybe a bad sign when they started doing that. Things are getting better, obviously, at Games Workshop these last year. But so maybe they'll start to bring it back a little bit more. Maybe they'll have one in America eventually. But I don't know. We'll see. So. I have 2 Games Workshop stores. One is 15 minutes down the road, and the one is a 45-minute drive. Well, that's you're lucky there, Shane, because yeah, around here there's just not much. Like if you live near Milwaukee, which is the biggest city I think in Wisconsin, then you've got something available, but otherwise not so much. Let's see here. Odin says, "Hey Adam, what do you think of Warhammer Hordes? I played War Machine in version 1.5 a little bit, and I got into version 2, Mark 2. I had a what do you call them? A Khador army, and the rules never completely stuck with me. I just like the stories are kind of interesting, and I like the storyline, and some of the artwork I dig, and Khador was a cool army to me to some degree, but the fact that it's I just don't like. I don't know. I'm not sure what it is, but it hasn't struck with me, and not a lot of people play it around by me, so that doesn't really drive me to push into it too much. I'm interested in, now that they've got Mark III, I'm interested in seeing what the rules changes are and things like that. But yeah, Mofar, Chicago is in the middle of the country, really? Well, I mean, it's not on the West Coast and it's not on the East Coast, so it's like in the middle-ish, and it's a good hub for people who need to travel by a plane because O'Hare is a big airport. So, kinda. Let's see here. My local game store is. Why do you guys think it is acceptable? I don't know what that means. Prive for an IO. I don't know what that means. We had new releases you are most excited for at Gen Con. I'm not going to Gen Con this year, so that's a good question. I'm interested in checking out Conflict 47, which is new from the guys who make Bolt Action. And it's basically Bolt Action-esque, but it's also kind of weird World War II. Like they're getting into alternate history, crazy, weird, super high science kind of stuff for... it's a smart plan, actually. Like when I first started hearing about Conflict 47, and Conflict is spelled with a K, by the way, so just if you're looking it up. The thing that's interesting about it is that you can still use your normal bolt action guys, because troops are generally troops. Like normal, just regular infantry are normal regular infantry. You may have special infantry that might have also, laser guns or something like that. But it's interesting that you kind of mix those things together. You're still going to have potentially this tank, but you might also be backed up by a tank that has legs, and walks along as like a robot or whatever. And so that's kind of neat. It's interesting that they're doing that. So I'm kind of interested in that. Yeah. Anyway. Who would win a fight, 1,000 lions or the sun? The sun. That's not hard. Let's see here. If my set has square 25mm, does it mean the set is old? Yes. I mean, that's nothing wrong with that. You can still use the squares if you want to. There's nothing that says in the Age of Sigmar rules that you can't use square bases. They kind of actually say, use whatever bases you want. I personally prefer rounds because I prefer the look of the bases, but I'm weird that way. That's my own personal thing. So, do what you want. If you want to get round bases and put them, in there, and you can do that too. I'd look on eBay or lots of different places. You can buy, packs of round bases for cheap. So yeah. Let's see here. Did you ever do a video with Tabletop Minis? Because I know you have done streams with Andy 2D6. No, I don't really know the Tabletop Minis guys. I've seen a couple of their videos. I know they're in Europe somewhere. Northernish Europe, I would have to guess. But, yeah, but I haven't, no. The reason that I've done stuff with Andy is because Andy and I have met, in person, like at Adepticon a couple of years and stuff, so we've kind of started a friendship that way and everything, and so, yeah, I've been on his show a couple of times, but I don't know, do they do a live show at Tabletop Minis? I don't know that I've ever seen one, but then again, I haven't looked at their channel in a couple of months at least, so yeah. I tried to rebase, but I almost destroyed some of my models. How do you go about it? I sometimes use a CA glue debonder, put like a little bit around their feet, and let it soak a little bit. Not too much, you just let it soak a little bit, and then you just sort of give it nice sort of pressure until it pops. Another way you can do it is try to get a hobby knife underneath there sometimes and use it to wedge, kind of. Like with all those skeletons, because they're very fragile. Skeletons are fragile. They have tiny little, feet and legs. With those guys, I was mainly using a knife to try to cut, and it worked out pretty well. Sometimes it also, if you buy older models that have been around for a while, that CA glue can get, what do you call it, like brittle. So it becomes a lot easier to pop them off of the bases in those situations. I have seen GW's earnings reports the last few years. In 2013, they made 138 million British pounds, and last fiscal year they made 118 million pounds. What are your thoughts on this? Well, I don't know. I think that we all kind of know that they do. Yeah, that that they've been on a bit of a downward slope. I think that over the last 6 months to a year, they're trying to really get back into social, get back into talking to people, get back into interacting with their customers, and I think that they're hopefully bringing some of that stuff back up again, but it'll take time. So, but yeah, someone asked me before, did I used to work for Beasts of War? Yes, 2010 to 2013, I was a U.S. correspondent for Beasts of War, kind of like Dawn and Gianna are doing, they go to Gen Con, they go to Adepticon and stuff like that. I was doing that in 2010 through 2013, and then I decided that I wanted to start my own channel. So, and they were great guys, but I was like, well, it would be a conflict of interest, I think. So I said, well, I'm going to stop doing the U.S. correspondent thing, and I'm going to start my own channel. Hopefully some year, the guys from Beasts of War will get to come over for Gen Con or Adepticon, because I would like to hang out and have some beers with them. So, yeah. But yeah, so that was cool though. It was interesting. It was cool stuff. We did some kind of cool things. I liked doing reporting and stuff like that. It's crazy busy, when you go to Adepticon or Gen Con and you do anywhere from 12 to 16 different interviews over the course of the 4 days or whatever. Yeah, that can get that can get pretty nerve-wracking, but it's fun though. So yeah. Melanie says their stock, GW's stock, is on an uptick. I think they're recovering. I agree. I think that they've started to turn things around. So yeah. Let's see here. Good morning to the person in the reflection. Was there somebody back there? My wife might have walked by, I suppose. She was just going to the other room. Let's see here. GW is a public company and the largest, so it's easy to find their financials. Yes, that's true. That's one of the upsides, I guess, of them being, for us at least, for them being public, is that we get to look and see. Like, there was just a report that came out very recently, in the last month or two, I think, that showed that Age of Sigmar is about 30% of their sales right now, where when Age of Sigmar launched and Fantasy stopped, Fantasy was like at 17% of their sales. So it seems like there are a lot of people out there who are still like, oh, well, Age of Sigmar is not selling. And that doesn't seem to be true according to the financials. So I think that's good. So Nathan says, going to start a new Age of Sigmar army. Would you recommend ogres or lizardmen? Whatever they are called now. If it was me, I would say lizardmen, because I think the lizardmen are cool. But it's totally up to you, frankly. I did a video a month ago about how to pick your army, and the big thing is basically what do you like the look of, frankly. Now, if you are very competitive, if you're a competitive player and you want to play in tournaments, then today's star, which is this book right here, is something you should pick up, and then you should figure out what the best points are and what the best all that stuff is and blah, 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 and then not base it off of how you want to play or what you like the look of or what you want to paint, but base it totally off of what you think the best army is strategic-wise. That's a technical term. But the fact of the matter is that in my mind, you pick the armies that you like, and then you go from there. So for me, it would be lizardmen because I think they're cool, and I would prefer to paint them over ogres. But you may want to do something different. So that's my best advice, I think, probably for that. Let's see here. Whatever you do, if you're starting about Age of Sigmar, I would definitely tell you though to, no matter what, make sure that the army that you want to get into has one of those start collecting boxes attached to it. Like, I know the lizardmen do. I don't know if ogres do, but I know that there's a start collecting box because those are a super good value. Like, the start collecting box in America is $85, and it comes with a Carnosaur, which is an $85 kit. Plus, it comes with a whole bunch of lizardmen and a bunch of other crap. So they're really good value. Some of them are worth as much as $150 if you were to buy them retail, but you're paying $85. So you definitely want to look into that if you're starting a new army. Look at whatever army you're interested in and look and see if there's a start collecting box, because it will save you a ton of cash. Have you talked about the new rules regarding summoning units and how it seems to make them almost pointless? Nope, I haven't. I don't know. I think it's fine the way that they've done it, from what I understand. Now you're basically putting it's almost like they're coming in from reserve. I think that after playing games in the open stuff, there are people who will, and it's never happened to me. The only time that summoning has popped up to me in the games that I've played back before this book came out, when it was just open, is like, oh, this unit got killed off, I can summon them back on the board. I played against a lizard Seraphon player, and he had some, I don't know, skinks or little dudes who I killed out that unit, and then he was able to bring them back. But they had to start like way in the back of the board, so they never were really super effective coming back in. Just it was the way that the fight was going at that time. They had to be a certain distance away, and so they were kind of far away. Oops, just tapped the camera here, made it all wiggly. So I don't know. I'm not hurt by the fact that they've changed the way that summoning works. If you want to play the old way, then I would guess stick with the open stuff to some degree. I mean, I know there's been some changes as well in the frequently asked questions, but yeah, that's not, I don't know, that's not bothering me too much. How many Age of Sigmar armies do you have? Let's see here. I have a Chaos/Nurgle army. That's one army. My Death army I'm building and painting, partially. And then technically I have some Stormcast because I bought that original box set that had the Stormcast and the Chaos guys. And I guess technically I have the Chaos guys, but I'm eventually going to sell those guys because I don't think I want to play the Bloodkin, Corn, whatever the heck they're called. But I may eventually someday put the Stormcast together and do all that stuff. So I guess I really only have 2, but maybe eventually 3, just because they're in the basement. But I don't know that I'm going to bunch on them. But it takes points out of your army. You'll be outnumbered the moment the match starts, and if you lose your only method of summoning them, then you're screwed. Yep, that's why I probably wouldn't do a ton of summoning then. That's the thing. It's the same with 40k, right? Like, if you decide to hold most of your army in reserve, if you can, well, I've seen people who hold most of their army in reserve and then lose first turn because everything gets wiped off the table before they're able to bring in their stuff. That's the risk. You know, I think it's weaker than it was, because you used to just be able to go, oh, okay, well, on first turn, I'm going to drop all the skeletons that I own, which is 300 or whatever, and then just go, you know, and that's not a lot of fun for anybody. In a narrative game or something like that, okay, it's kind of cool. And in a narrative game, you can still do it. But if you're worried about it in points, it seems to me like the points should just be equal. So if it takes away from the points of your army, that's because you're going to be bringing them in, so either start them there. The benefit to summoning in this situation is you get to basically, it's like I said, it's basically like in 40k when you do, what is that called? They teleport in. I can't think of the word of it. Drop, no, I can't think of the word right now. But that's basically what they're doing, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. But that's the way that they're doing it. So if you want to follow along in the book, then that's the way they're doing it. But the Chadwalkie is saying that he has a solution for it where you set aside summoning should be double, blah, blah, blah. If you and your friends want to play it that way, that's cool. And if a tournament organizer decides this is the way we're going to do it, everything in this book, that's what's really interesting about this book, is they tell you, like, right up front, this is all optional. This entire book is optional. So, you know, use it the way you want. And I think that that's going to be how things are going to happen. No one, I don't think, is going to use, who's running a tournament, let me back that up. No one who's running a tournament is going to completely just follow what comes out of this book. I think all of them are going to be like, we're using the points from this book, but, and then they'll have a list of specific things that they're doing. That's just the way it's going to have to be. That's all. Deep Strike, thank you. It was on the tip of my tongue. I'm like, drop zone, Deep Strike, thank you. I appreciate that. So, yeah. Summoning is kind of like deep striking. So it's got roughly a lot of the same kind of potential downfalls. So yeah. I don't transport my models, but if I did, I would get a Pelican case. Wow, that would be expensive, probably. As a person who's also into photography, Pelican cases are not cheap. Well, that's a good question now I come to think of it. Because you probably get Pelican cases on Amazon, so maybe they'd be cheaper there in comparison to those hard side cases. Because I know, well, KR Meltic case obviously makes a lot of hard side cases. Battle Foam makes hard side cases that are that hard plastic, but they also have the squishy ones too. But the hard plastic ones, that'd be a good question. I should like find similarly sized Pelican, Battle Foam, and KR Multi case, and then do the math and figure out which one's cheaper. That'd be interesting. Anyway, so yeah, let's see here. Totally agree. I think the flexibility of the book is pretty amazing. Yeah, I think that I'm pretty impressed by it. Like if you guys watch the video on Friday, I do really like the book. Like I said, the points are still not my favorite way to look at it, but I'm glad they put it in there because I think it will bring people back who've been dubious about Age of Sigmar, or people who are like, I just don't think we want to do that or whatever. So yeah. How is the new job you got going? What is it exactly? What are you doing? It's going well. I've done the first week. I just finished the first week of my new job. I'm working in UI UX. I'm a UI UX designer at a company that mainly makes apps, business-to-business apps. I'll explain what a lot of that means. UI UX, UI stands for user interface. So it's basically when you're looking at the little buttons, if you're looking over here at YouTube, there's little buttons and little graphics and the way things are laid out. That's the user interface, how you as the user interfaces, you know, with this stuff. UX is user experience. There are certain apps that you like to use because they make sense, and when you click through here, this thing happens, and it happens in the way you would expect. And there are other apps which technically work, but they're confusing and don't seem to make any sense. That's bad user experience as opposed to good user experience. So I'm doing stuff like that, and it's been going well. So thank you for asking. Someone also asked about my wife and if she also gets involved in the hobby or if she thinks it's witchcraft. She does not paint, and I'm eventually going to we'll start playing some miniatures games eventually. She's more of a board gamer. She likes some board games that I find amazingly boring. Those of you who have ever heard of Mayfair Games, they make a series of train games like Empire Builder and Eurorails, and they're big maps covered in dots, and then you have a crayon, and then you build track from Copenhagen to someplace else, and then you have to, and then you pick up these cards that say, oh, take Cork to so and so, and you have to know where Cork comes from and then where it needs to get to, and these games can take like 6 hours, and she plays with some friends of hers and stuff, and I just can't. I just can't. So, so she's not like completely ungeeky. She likes board games and things like that. She a good portion of yesterday she played Civ 5, and she's really looking forward to Civilization 6. So she likes strategy games and things like that. She's not into the painting and things like I am. She's a knitter. She could maybe make tiny little sweaters for the little people, but probably not. I don't. That seems like really small. But we've not tried to make any knit. Like once maybe I get Glotkin finished, because he's pretty big, maybe she can make a tiny little sweater for him, but I don't think that would really hide the paint. I don't think that's useful. So yeah, let's see here. So that's that. So when are the pins coming out? That's a good question. They're here. I don't know exactly where they are. They're over there on the floor someplace in a box. Some of you have seen I put up a picture a while back on Instagram and whatnot, Facebook. I had some pins made. They're 1.5 inches in diameter, and they are Tabletop Minions pins. They look very much like the little icon over there. The little it's that hexagon. So they're enamel pins, and they should be hopefully, like, they're here. I have them, but I have to put them in the store, and I'm going to probably put them in the store with some other stuff. Like I mentioned, I got dice being made. They are in progress. They should be hopefully showing up in the next couple of weeks. So those are, once I get the dice and these things done, maybe then I'll put the store up, and then people can start doing it, or I might wait until I get the third product ready to go. So it might be September, but it might be earlier. That's it. My goal is September 1st, the latest, but I'd like to do it sooner. But yep, so we'll be doing some of that. Yep. Let's see here. A funny idea would be a Christmas-themed army, like snowflakes on the banner and sweaters above the armor. Well, that'd be funny. Actually, if you look on the Facebook page, on the Tabletop Minions Facebook page, not the Paint Showcase Club, there's an older video in there where there was a guy locally here who had, for 40K, he had Dark Eldar that were Christmas-themed, and he had tiny little Christmas lights that actually lit up on all their weird flying pointy skimmers. And I took some video of it at a tournament, and they were all red and green, and they had little puffballs on their stupid pointy heads and all that junk, and it was kind of hysterical. So if you take a look for the video on Facebook, you can find it there. Let's see here. Gary West says, I think I'm the only person that doesn't like Game of Thrones. Nothing wrong with that. We just started, my wife and I just started watching 4th season on Blu-ray. So we're not like, well, we don't have HBO, so we're not rabid about like making sure we keep up on it and stuff like that. And she's read all the books, so she generally kind of knows what's going to happen anyway. And I don't watch as much TV as I used to, so it's really fine. We watch it when we watch it. But there's nothing wrong with not liking it. That's fine. What would you think of Game of Thrones Warhammer? That's a good question. Joey Berry, years ago, like in 2013, I did an interview with Joey Berry at Adepticon, and she was working on a Game of Thrones themed Lizardmen army for fantasy. I don't know that she's been doing any of that stuff lately. She got like a real job working for a computer game company, the company that actually ended up making Total War Warhammer. She works for them now, and she's had another kid, and so I'm sure she probably doesn't have the time for too much wargaming, because children can do that to you, from what I understand. So yeah, but she was going to do it was going to be House, instead of Lannister, I think it was going to be Slanister, and she had all these different kind of like things that she was going to do with her Lizardmen army, but that was kind of interesting. Let's see here. Emperor's children are pink. That's true. It's very true. Let's see here. So, Paul asks, have you seen Blood and Plunder on Kickstarter yet? No, I have not. Is that a pirate-based like skirmish game or something like that? I'll have to take a look into it. The only Kickstarter thing that I've been seeing recently that I've been kind of interested in is Secret Weapon Miniatures has just done a Kickstarter. It's not finished yet. It's still in progress. They hit their goal and everything, but it's so Secret Weapon Miniatures a couple years ago made these like terrainscapes tiles that are kind of like the Realm of Battle tiles, but instead of being 2 feet by 2 feet, they're 1 foot by 1 foot, and they come in a bunch of different flavors. Not really, don't lick them. But there's like Junkyard, Wasteland, there's a bunch of different ones. Well, now they're doing, what do you call them? Like basically dungeon tiles. So it's more for RPGs and stuff like that, technically, but it's dungeon tiles, and that Kickstarter is doing really well. And I'm kind of interested. Like, I don't really play RPGs, but they're neat. I don't know that I'm going to get any, but they're neat looking, and I think it's cool that he's kind of going that direction. So, let's see. Have you purchased the Age of Sigmar Castle Terrain feature, like the big crazy chaos one? No. It's very pointy. I have not purchased that. I have most of the terrain that I have. The only terrain that I have that's actually Age of Sigmar is the Baleful Realm Gates, which are nearly done painting, and that Ophidian Archway, which is a piece of garbage. But I haven't done any of the rest of the stuff. All the rest of my terrain is either for Lord of the Rings, but it'll work, or fantasy, but it'll work. Adam, how do you balance the hobby and your personal life? I don't know. We don't have kids, so that helps. I think that, when you have kids, that obviously they require a lot of time, and so we don't do that. So we both have our hobbies. My wife's a musician and also likes to knit and do other craft stuff, and I like to do this, and she likes to play board games, and I like to make videos, and so I guess it's not that difficult. If I was a parent, it would be far more difficult to try to do specifically the kind of painting and playing and stuff that I want to do, plus also the video stuff and things that we've got going here, and then also taking care of children and making sure that they don't, die and stuff, because that's really what you do with kids, is make sure they don't die. You have to go beyond that as well. You have to teach them and feed them. Well, feeding them, I guess, has something to do with them not dying, but you know what I'm saying. We have cats, but cats don't go to college, so they don't have to super worry about that, really, but yeah. Frostgrave's newest expansion is Dungeons. Yeah, I think I saw something about that. I need to look a little bit more into that. I know that they're doing something, and I think it's cool. I really love how Frostgrave is taking off. I think that's really cool. So, the Hellfort. Yes, that's what that chaos thing. Screw the Hellfort. It took a buddy of mine and I a solid week to build and paint that bugger. I would think that you could accidentally fall on it and be killed, too. I mean, it is really pointy and covered in spikes. Like, if you were, like, waiting for it to dry out in the driveway after you primed it and all that stuff like that, you might, oops, and then, it's stabbing, is my point. Vomit on your shoes seems to be a cat worry. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he did, well, actually, he was more trying to vomit on the power strip. That would be a bigger worry than on my shoes. My shoes I can clean. The power strip is like, who knows. So, yeah. Do you like using Citadel washes? I do. Citadel washes are good because I like using them for shading. I've painted something and I need to darken it a bit, or I need to whatever. That's what they're great for. But the trying to use them for terrain, like if you put like a Agrax Earthshade or whatever, or Nuln Oil, you throw that in an airbrush to try to like just kind of darken parts of terrain a lot quicker, you will not really see any effect. I've noticed recently that their stuff does not work through an airbrush. Like, it'll spray, but it won't really do much. So what I've started doing is using secret weapon washes, which are really glazes more than washes, and they're a lot thicker. Those through an airbrush can really help your terrain. So I use those more for that. I also use secret weapon washes for, like, with those. If you go back a couple of episodes of this, I showed off the death heroes that I had, and they were basically airbrushed like black and white. It's because then I'm going to go with secret weapon washes, and I'm going to put washes over them to color them, but they'll be transparent washes. That's also not a good use for GW washes. GW washes are designed to, once you've done your base coating, then you put the stuff on there, and it helps add the detail, and it helps to shade, and helps to do that kind of stuff, but it's not great for normal, like if you're trying to glaze, basically, they're not great for that. So yeah, nothing better than the huck 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 sound of a cat barfing in the morning. Oh yeah, no, I know what you mean. death by terrain, the fear is real. When I first saw that crazy Hellfort Chaos thingy, I was like, that looks dangerous. I have, when I used to play Chaos, I have hurt myself in the past trying to like glue something together because it's covered in spikes because it's Chaos and you're having to hold it real tight, and I'm like, ow, 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 ow. So yeah, it's a struggle. It's real. Let's see here. What's my favorite Age of Sigmar army? Well, currently, I would say it's Chaos with some Nurgle and some Skaven and a little bit of goat people involved. And then my other favorite is Death, pretty much, with mostly skeletons, because those are the two armies that I'm currently playing. So that's where I'm at. So yeah, that's I like that stuff. I don't know why. I know that when the first models came out for Stormcast Eternals, everyone was really... Some people were like, well, they look kind of like Space Marines. Other people were like, oh, those look really cool. They just haven't quite struck me. Like, they're interesting. And like I said, I own some just because they came in that starter box thing. But, I don't know. I did not push myself to immediately go out and start working on them and building them and painting them. I decided to go Chaos instead. And I think it's... For me, there seems to be a little bit more interest. I don't know why, but there is. Speaking of Age of Sigmar, I'm going to move this coffee over there. So the book. Let's talk about ourselves, the book. So, if you haven't bought it yet and you're thinking about Age of Sigmar, I think it's a pretty good deal. This is, when I bought this was retail $25 American. My local shop, basically knocks 20% off of pretty much everything Games Workshop, so I actually paid $20 for it. So, like I said, it's 170 pages, and it is all color. There's a lot of big images and cool stuff, and it's nice that way. It's perfect bound. It's not hardcover. It's bendy, as you can see, but it's got some really great. I was pretty impressed with it, especially after, like I mentioned in the other video, I bought the the Chaos Alliance tome or whatever, battle tome, probably about 4 or 5 months ago, which is thicker than this, but still also bendy, and it was like $33, and I think it was a waste of money, frankly. The reason I think that those books are a waste of money, at least to me, is because most of the information that's in that book is in the app, or I can just download it. It's like, I honestly think it's for people who are like, I don't like to download things, or I don't like to print out my own, or I don't like to use the app, I want to have a book. Okay, cool. But I kind of thought there was going to be something else in there, some more fluff, potentially some battle plans / scenarios, but there was nothing except just basically all the war scrolls for that army. And I'm like, all right, well, I wasted my $33 or whatever. So, yeah, but this to me is not a waste at all. This is, if you're interested in just the open gaming stuff, this has got you covered. If you're interested in the, more new narrative stuff, this has got you covered. And then the points. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I'm really pretty happy about it. So inside the book here, let's go back to here since we're not going to probably do that for a while. All right, so inside the book, like I said, we start off with there's a little bit of fluff, but like honestly on page 2 there is the most important rule, which I'm going to read to you. In a game as detailed and wide-ranging as Warhammer Age of Sigmar, there may be times when you are not sure exactly how to resolve a situation that has come up during play. When this happens, you have a quick chat with your opponent and apply the solution that makes the most sense to you both, or seems the most fun. If no single solution presents itself, both of you should roll a die, and whoever rolls higher gets to choose what happens. Then you can get on with the fighting. Now, they've had things like that before in many of their books that have basically said, if you're confused, throw a die and you'll be fine. But they also have a section in here somewhere where they talked about how all the rules are basically optional, and I'm not sure if we're going to find that. But it's interesting to kind of see how, they put this out, but it's not, how am I trying to say this? It's not canon, you know what I mean? Like, you don't put it out and say, this entire book this is the way it has to be. They're basically saying, this is a whole bunch of stuff. You can use what you want or don't, whatever. If you just want to use one section, you want to use just parts of one section, you can totally do all that stuff, and it's really kind of interesting that way. So I think this was a really smart idea on their part. They put in, a lot of extra battle plans. They put in stuff about themed armies, big, huge battles. Here's one that's basically called the Death of Nagash, which has got a big... There we go. So there's a lot going on in there. Oscar, Adam, please answer. Game of Thrones, Warhammer, yay or nay? Nay, I wouldn't play it. So let's see here. Map campaigns. So yeah, they've added in like just so much. Like the map campaigns alone, the idea of playing and like taking over areas and all that stuff, it's really cool. I think that would be really interesting. So, and then in the back, we've got, well, again, the big 4-page rules. But there's there's a bunch of allegiance abilities. So if you have your entire army being one way, then you will get benefits and bonuses and artifacts of chaos and artifacts of order and things like that, and that's really cool. Let's see here. What else are we doing here? I see Matthew Sears is here. Hello. I see Greenleaf Terrain is here. Hello. Let's see here. The Facebook page is very good. Thank you, Shane. Okay, we're just gonna do a little bit of work here. Boof. Okay. All right, so just turned off the little politic talk. That's cool. Anyway, speaking of politics, I'm going to talk about points. So a lot of people stayed away from Age of Sigmar initially because they did not like the fact that there weren't any points. I kind of gravitated towards Age of Sigmar because I liked the idea that there weren't any points. But in this new book, they have added in the whole... I'm going to try to actually bring this back onto the camera here so you can see it. And so they've got pages and pages and pages of these charts of points. So here's destruction. This is the pitched battle profiles for destruction, which you can almost see with destruction up here. So what they're doing here is they've got the different sections. So here we've got, and you can't see my finger. Oh, dang it. All right, so this is Beast Claw Raiders, and then the units, minimum, maximum, points, and then the battlefield roll, and then the notes. So what happens is that you will have unit size. So unit size is going to be a minimum and a maximum. And this is kind of confusing to some people because in the minimum and maximum, so let's say over here on this page, maybe you can see it, but it'll be upside down. There's the Crypt Ghouls, which are a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 40 in a single unit. So it says 100 points. What that means is that if you go with the minimum of 10 Crypt Ghouls, you pay 100 points. If you wanted to go with 20 Crypt Ghouls, you'd have to pay 200 points. If you wanted to go with 30, you'd have to go with 300 points, and so on, up to 40 maximum. But let's say you had 15 Crypt Ghouls. Now, normally you would think that would be 150 points, because it seems like they are 10 points each, because you get 10 of them for 100. Well, as it turns out, that's not the way it works. If you had 15, you'd have to pay for it as if you had 20. That's what it says in the rules. I put that in the video. I showed you the picture of that block and thing that said this is the way it works. So, in my mind, that's a little weird. And again, this is all optional. So if you and your friends want to decide, well, okay, these guys are obviously 10 points apiece, and just do it that way, knock yourself out. I don't think that would be a big deal. Tournaments would have to make their own, considerations, and that's fine. But the trick is that they're giving you the minimum and the maximum, then they're giving you the points, and then they give you a battlefield roll. So the battlefield roll, you have battle line, which is basically like troops or like normal, dudes. You have leaders, you have behemoths, which are big, kind of dudes. Is there anything else? Behemoths? There's leader, behemoth, battle line. I think that's about it. I don't see anything else. It's really just those 3. Of course, then there's War Scroll battalions. They list a lot of those in here too. So they tell you, like, if you look in the books, if you look in the app, they'll have these battalions that were put out, which was like, if you take this, this, and this, and this, they get this special bonus because they're a special battalion. They give you the points for the battalion, which, from what I understand, is it's the extra points for the effect. Like, you still have to pay for the guys who are in the battalion, but if you decide to go with this particular plan, then it costs maybe an extra 60 points, or an extra 140, or an extra 120, depending on what they are. So, like, under here, under the Khorne Bloodbound, there's the Bloodbound War Horde, the Bloodbound War Band, the Dark Feast, the Gore Chosen, Skulltake, Bloodstorm, Brass Stampede, Red Headsman, and Goreblade War Band. Those are all the different battalions that are under the Khorne Bloodbound. And they range in price from 60 for the Goreblade Warband up to as much as 140 for the Bloodstorm. So you pay extra to get the benefit that the battalion would give to you. So for playing with points, are you limited to playing purely order? You're not. If you want to get benefits, then you stick with one army, and that's what the allegiances are at the back of the points section. The allegiance abilities for destruction, allegiance abilities for chaos. So, like, armies with the chaos allegiance gain the following battle trait, and then you have unpredictable destruction, and you have special command traits, and then you also have the potential to get artifacts. Like a demon weapon, or a chaos rune blade, a beguiling gem, chaos talisman, Favor of the Gods, and the Crown of Conquest. So keeping your army into one of the 4 Grand Alliances will give you a benefit for doing so, from what I understand. But otherwise, it's, yeah, you don't, if you still want to just mix and match and do all kinds of stuff like that, you totally can. So, yeah. And then there are also more specific alliances like Stormcast Eternals or, you know, Clan Pestilence or whatever. But, yeah. All right, let's see here. I started with the Archers and more Liberators. I'm reading some more stuff there. The Dracothian Guard are pretty cool. The extra weapons in the Retributor box are pretty good. The Star Drake is an unbelievable model. I know it goes together really well. I've talked to people who've built one, and they're like, I really love the way it goes together. I just don't like the wings. I don't know why. It's just like this. They've got this real thing at GW about making these creatures, like the big Maw Crusher does the same thing. It sort of has those weird, like, wingy arms, and they're, like, pushed down, you know, like it's leaning down and all this stuff, and I don't know. They just, to me, that's not a, it's just an aesthetic thing. I don't know. But from what I understand, the model is really easy to build, and it's a great kit that way, so that's cool, but it's just not my personal preference as far as the look is concerned. So does playing with points throw the War Scroll benefits out the window? No, because you still have to use the War Scrolls, from what I understand. So you still have to, you know, that's what you work off of. That's where you get all your stats and all the other junk. So I'm not quite sure if you mean something else. Let's see here. Is the max unit size the limit of models you can field? From what I understand, no. It is the max that a single unit could have. So if it says max unit size, you know, if it's, let's say it's skeletons, I think it's 30 or 40 in a skeleton, you know, thing. So that's the max that you could have for a single unit. Now, if you wanted to go higher than that, you'd have to start another unit if you wanted to, you know. But they also have, specifically for points, they also have a section about, if I can find it here, how many points your battles should be, roughly. So there's the Vanguard, the Battle Host, and the War Host. Vanguard is 1,000 points, Battle Host is 2,000 points, and the War Host is 2,500, which in my video on Friday I said 3,000, but that was a mistake. There's leaders. Oh, there's a okay, artillery is the other classification. There's leaders, battle line, behemoth, artillery, and then evidently other units, which don't fit into any kind of category. So for the Vanguard, the smallest, which is 1,000 points, you can have 1 to 4 leaders. That's a decent amount of leaders. You have to have at least 2+ battle line units. So, like for me in Chaos, my Warriors of Chaos, my Chaos Warriors, whatever they're called now, they are battle line. The Goat people, they would be battle line. So just having those 2 in the army, boom, now I've got that covered. Artillery can have 0 to 2, so you don't have to take any artillery if you don't want to, but you can only have maximum 2 units of artillery. Same with behemoths, 0 to 2. And then other units, whatever they might be, can be any number. So it's kind of getting a little bit back to the chain of command or whatever they're called. That kind of stuff. You can kind of do some of that jazz. So it's interesting. Anyway. And then, you can get to the point with the battle host, which is 2,000 points. You're looking at 3+ battle line. And in the war host, you have to have 4. So if you're going to play a big battle, 2,500 points, you've got to have at least 4 units of regular kind of generic troops. And then we'll go from there. So, Lionel Scott Harston. They promised free rules when Age of Sigmar came out, but now you got to pay for all your rules. Well, you can still download the 4-page rule book or packet, whatever, for free. You don't have to buy the book here, Lionel. So if you want to add on to it, then you would buy the General's Handbook if you want to go that direction. But otherwise, the normal rules are still free. The 4-pager PDF is still free. And the War Scrolls are all free as well. So, exactly. Let's see here. Kristen says, I'm putting together 20 Plague Monks myself. I'm about 3/4 of the way through building my Plague Monks, and then I started building skeletons. So, yeah, the Plague Monks are fun. Those little pieces of paper that hang off of their woe staffs, those are a little hard for me to put on, and there's a lot of them, so I have to, go through all of that stuff. But yeah. Yeah, the battalions mostly cost 60 points on top of your list to use them. Anywhere up to, like I said, just in the ones I was looking at, went from 60 to about 140. But, a lot of those battalion bonuses are really quite beneficial. So paying extra points for them makes sense as far as just for straight balancing. If you have to have a point system, then it makes sense you'd have to do that. So, yeah. I'm going to just do this. But I thought the War Scrolls were included in the Battle Tome or the app, which is not free. No, the app is free. I've got it on my phone. I didn't pay for it. And plus, you can also get all the War Scrolls directly off the website if you just want to download the PDFs as well. So the War Scrolls are free on the website as PDFs. The app is completely free. There are things in the app you can buy, like if you want to buy from specific books. Rather than buying the book, you could just buy access to all the battle plans and all the scenario stuff and whatever like that. But otherwise, no. The app. Let's see if I can make this work. This is going to have some glare. Let's see here. So I'm going to bring up the app. Boop, boop. That's not the right button. Stupid glare. So yeah. If you just go to War Scrolls, you can just scroll through. These are all things, but the little lock means you have to buy them. So there's specific battalion things and things like that, because the battalions come in the books, and so they got to make a little bit of money that way. But if you scroll past all these, and it will quickly download, and then I will tap. Oops, I did that wrong. There. So now there, your Plague Bearers of Nurgle, that's your thing, and then you can zoom in and whatever and look at all the information. So the app is free, and the War Scrolls are free, so it just works out fine. Let's see here. You can play it with 6 models. Be a bit boring, but possible. Yeah, actually, there are special things in the book here about how to play. Like, I have one big monster and you have a bunch of guys that are attacking, which is sort of interesting, I think. They have stuff like that. It's more like open play or whatever, but they've got scenarios for that, like just big monster hunts, which I think could be kind of cool, especially if you do have a bigger thing, like if you've got an Archaon or if you've got, Glotkin or whatever like that, the ones I can think of off the top of my head. That would be sort of a fun thing. It's a neat concept, so yeah. What do you think about the double turn in the competitive game? I'm assuming you're talking about, like, maybe at the end you went second in this turn, and then when you roll off for the next turn, then you get to go first. I like that. I think that, I know there's a lot of competitive players who don't like it because it adds not inconsistency, but it's an unknown factor for when you're building your strategy. But I think that strategy needs to be able to interact with unknown factors. I know a lot of people, like when Age of Sigmar first came out, they just were like, well, we're just not going to do it that way. We'll roll off for initiative at the beginning, and then we'll just alternate back and forth like we used to. And I really don't think, to me, that's not the cool way to do it, because then you just know, like, well, I have to do this, and then he has to do that, and I have to do this, and he has to do that. And in this situation now, you can just be like, well, I need to plan ahead for the fact that I might not get to go first next turn, you know, or whatever. So to me, it's more strategically interesting, even though I'm not much of a strategist. I just like the concept a lot more. So, if you want to take a Sylvaneth forest wood for my Sylvaneth army, is it free? Like, can I just plop one on the field? Oh, the woods. That's a good question. I don't know if the terrain has points. Let's take a look. So I see what you're saying. Yeah, because there are war scrolls for the terrain. Like the Dreadstone Blight's got its own war scroll, and the Realm Gates have got their own war scroll, and all that jazz. I don't know if there's war scrolls for, or not war scrolls, I don't know if there's points for the terrain. Well, let's see here. This is the compendium section, which is kind of all the people who don't fit into the normal, unless it's under. Yeah, I don't think you have to pay for terrain, frankly. So that's kind of interesting. So let's see here. But yeah, the woods do have specific rules. Like all the terrain has got specific rules. Again, if you look in the app, or if you just go online and download them, you can find them there. Yeah. Let's see here. Nicholas says, yeah, but then if it's free, you can just be a jerk and place like 20 of them. Okay, well, they're, from what I understand, about 40 or 50 bucks a piece. So if you want to do that, okay, you could do that. But then probably people won't play against you anymore. So just FYI. That's the thing that people come up all the time and they're like, well, I'll just drop a bunch of these then. I'm like, oh, like there's a battalion, I believe, in this thing for 24 Varangard. That's $800 retail. So, I mean, if you want to go that direction, I mean, you can, you know. But yeah, I wouldn't do it, frankly. So, yeah. Let's see here. All right. I'm just going to do that. All right. So, let's see here. Let's see here. You can summon terrain in Age of Sigmar. There's certain terrain you can. A friend of mine that I play against has one of those. I think it originally came out with the terrain and treachery, or not the terrain and treachery. Treachery and, you guys remember what that was called? Treachery. It came out for an 8th edition for Fantasy, and it was something and treachery. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, it was all about magic, and it was for fantasy, and it was this tower that's maybe about a foot tall, and it's like a crazy magic tornado thing or whatever, and you put a wizard on top of it. I cannot triumph in treachery. There we go. Yep. See, armor freak. You got it just as I said it. Well, yeah. So yeah. So triumph and treachery. When that came out, there was some sort of flying wizard tower doohickey, and that's the trick that you put it on top of there, and that can be summoned. The wizard has to summon it, and there's a specific number they have to hit with their magic and blah, blah, blah. And then it gives them benefits. It like doubles their range and does a bunch of other stuff. But normal terrain, like a castle and stuff like that, I don't think you can just summon, from what I understand. So, yeah. But yeah, that's the one thing in here. Yeah, I did not see any points in here. If anybody else has, let me know if there's some place that they're hiding the points for the terrain in there that I just haven't seen. Let me know if you did. But yeah. So yeah. All right. Let's see here. Wasn't Triumph and Treachery? What's that tower called? Wizard Storm? Storm of Magic? Is that what that wizard thing is called? All right. I thought it came out with Triumph and Treachery, but I could be wrong. Anyway, I don't think they're not in print anymore. You can't get them anymore. But a friend of mine's got one, and so he's gonna have actually Sam, I think, paint it. Sam, friend of the show, Sam. And yeah, so that'll be really cool because Sam's a very good painter. Let's see here. What else have we got? Any other questions? How are they going to release points for the new factions not in the General's Handbook? That's a very good question. I have a suspicion, if I had to guess, what they would probably do, I mean, you know, well, so Melanie's like they'll just do a second book, which seems like it would, then you'd have to wait a really long time. I have a suspicion they'll tack them onto the bottom of each war scroll. So in the future, going forward, when a new unit comes out, I get the feeling they'll have the war scroll with all the normal stuff at the bottom, and then probably either below the keywords or right down nearby the keywords, they'll put in the line that matches the line from the book. That's just going to be, you know, like, okay, min, max, points, you know, battle line, you know, and then notes. And that's really all they really need to do to make it fit in there. So yeah, I would suspect they're probably going to be, the new ones are going to most likely be in the war scroll. Now, if you buy the battle tomes, they'll probably be in there as well. If they only put them in the battle tomes and they don't put them on the free war scroll, I think that would be a super big mistake on their part, because then people would be peeved about having to buy the battle tomes when they just want to, you know, that would be probably bad. So I have a suspicion that they'll do it that way. Now, the question is then, I mean, and I get it, but then people will say, well, you know, then what's the point? Like, because I don't think they're going to go through all the old war scrolls and put the points on there. They may, but if they do, then there'll be fewer people who would buy the book. So I don't know how that's going to work. That's a very good question, actually. How that's going to happen. I don't know. It'd be interesting because yeah, if you put them on going forward, you'd want to put them on probably the war scrolls. But then people would say, well, why don't you just put them all on the old war scrolls? Well, because then all of a sudden now the book is not. Although honestly, like I said, those battle tomes are not. They're basically just the same stuff that's available for free download. So, but some people just like printed stuff. Like, there are plenty of people out there who only were like, I'm a big fan of PDF, but, you know, there are certain people out there who like, I have to have the printed book. I will not just go with an e-book or an e-copy. Or like, my wife does not like ebooks for like novels and stuff like that. I love ebooks because then I don't have to. I have moved now enough books in my life from place to place, you know, when you pick up and move to a new apartment or a new house or whatever, that I don't want to do that so much anymore. So now I try to buy as many books as possible in ebook format generally. Now, I could have bought this book in ebook format, but I don't know, I just thought I'd help. Well, partially it's also because, like, you know, I buy this from my local game store and that helps them. And if I bought it straight from GW, that doesn't help my local game store. Sometimes it's just quicker to go through these things. But for novels and things like that, books I'm going to read, whether it's like a novel or whether it's even like a historical book or things like that, I generally go with ebooks because I can carry a whole bunch of them on my iPad all at once, and that's really nice. And it's way lighter than a box full of books or 25 boxes full of books, which is what we moved last time when we moved into the house 5 years ago. Anyway, so yeah. I played the Mongol model in the Death Army yesterday, and the guy I played it said it was 400 points, so I believe the app on his phone gave him the points, unsure where he got the number from. I have not updated my app recently, so I'll have to take a look at the app to see if it has been updated or not. But yeah, I'll do that and see what's going on with that. Because yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they did just decide to put all the points in the app. I have a suspicion they haven't. Let's take a look here. Like I said, I have not updated, but if I go to the books section, gaming aids, new titles added. This is super interesting, I know. So yeah, the General's Handbook is here under the gaming aids section, and it's $16. Oh, and there's a free FAQ, though, which was updated. That's interesting. All your rules and errata questions answered in a free download. I'll have to check that out because it seems that there's already a General's Handbook official FAQ, so that's helpful. There's a regular FAQ and a General's Handbook regular FAQ, so I'll make sure to download both of those. And if you guys are doing it, you should think about it too. The app is really super nice. It's Android and iOS, and it's free. like I said, there are in-app purchases if you want to buy books or access to stuff without actually buying the actual physical book. But if you just want to use it to like go through and look at stuff and see stats and all that kind of stuff, they did recently add in, finally, it took them a while, but they recently added in the way, so you, instead of having to scroll through everything to try to figure out where it was, if you're like, I just want to know about Beastmen, you can do a search now that's a text search, and that really is helpful. So you can like go, oh yeah, no, I want to add these guys to my army. I mean, honestly, it's a hell of a sales tool on their part, because it used to be, if you thought about like, well, I want to play these guys, but I don't know, you'd have to try to find online someone who had taken the stats from the book, or you'd have to go out and buy a codex or a war, army book. Now you can just sit there like, on the couch while you're watching TV and scroll through and look at people's stats and all the information. Now, like I said, I don't think you can necessarily look at the points because they're not attached to each other that I can see. But, it's really a nice thing where you can go through and see the information and go, oh, I think I might want to buy one of those. And to me, it makes more sense. And I'm glad that they're finally starting to get into the 20th century, for God's sakes. And yes, I did say the 20th century. And moving into some computers, because they got the internet on the computers now. And I'm glad that Games Workshop is finally figuring that out. So let's see. I missed what app we're discussing. Painting, all that jazz. Oh, we were discussing the, what's it called now here? It's called the... I think it's just called the AOS. It's WHAOS was written underneath it, but it's the Warhammer Age of Sigmar app. Point. You can't see anything. It's really bright. I don't know why. I've got a bad exposure. But yeah, so the app is really pretty good for Age of Sigmar. If you play Age of Sigmar, you should get the app because it's free, and it really, really helps. So it's got all the rules in it. It's got access to all the frequently asked questions. It's got all the war scrolls for all the different armies. It's got access to the battalions and things like that. Granted, you have to pay, like I said, you pay for like the battalions that you don't have books for and stuff like that. But, you don't have to buy those things if you don't want to. Everything else is basically free. So, points are in the app if you purchase an upgrade. Really? I'll have to take a look at that. That's interesting. Holy let me see here. What else is there? Chat stuff. I definitely tell people going the digital route, just do the app and save money. General's Handbook is only $15. It's $15.99. At least when I was just looking at it, the General's Handbook on the app. It's only $25 for the book, for the General's Handbook, like a physical copy. Depends on which, if you don't want to carry a physical copy, that's totally cool. Sometimes I find it difficult to look at some of this stuff on the phone, but it's nice because you can carry your phone around a little bit. But if you've got like an iPad or a tablet, for Android or whatever, that can sometimes be a little bit better. So it's totally up to you. I just recently got a new iPad. I did not have the app on my old iPad because I was running out of space. So my new iPad has a lot more space, so I might probably go and download the app just to have it. So let's see here. What else have we got? Clicking. Okay. Yeah. I understand what you're talking about as far as autocorrect. You need to buy the General's Handbook in the apartment to get the points in here. I think you meant app, which I understand. So yeah, I think it's interesting the way that they've been going with this. I'm glad to see. Well, so one thing that happened with the General's Handbook, which they haven't done for a while, and I enjoy, is we heard about the General's Handbook like 2-3 months ago? Like they were talking about it. I think that they're starting to get away, and I think this is great. They're starting to get away from the pretty much nonstop, like we're only going to talk about a thing a week before it comes out. I mean, they're still doing it with models to some degree, but the fact that they were talking about the General's Handbook back in spring, and that was a big deal, I think, because I think that they've finally gotten over the hump as far as like, well, we can really only do, this and that, and we can really only, like they've got this secrecy thing they've been doing for years and years and years, and I've never understood to what end, like what's the benefit to doing it this way. I go to this distributors conference every spring with my friend Kevin, who owns the local shop, so I help him out with some marketing stuff, and then we end up going to this conference, and it's fun, and it's a little thing. And there's benefit to me in going to it because you free meals while we're there, which is awesome, but also because it's part of the conference. But also I do get to sometimes talk to. There is a trade show on Friday or Thursday or Friday of the 2-day thing. There's a trade show, and so I can go talk to actual people who work for game companies and just be like, hey, like this year I talked to some of the guys from Steamforged, the guys that do Guild Ball. Like they came over from the UK for this developers or distributors conference in Wisconsin, and that was really cool. The thing that's interesting about going to a lot of the seminars there is that you would go to like Games Workshop seminar and they would not talk about upcoming releases in the past. They would just be like, well, here's how you can sell more Space Marines or whatever. I mean, that was literally one year that was their seminar, was how to sell more stuff. And then you would go to like Privateer Press's seminar, and they would tell you about all the stuff that they're releasing for the next 12 months. And then you would go to like Wizards of the Coast, and they would tell you about all the stuff they're developing and releasing over the next 12 months. And that's just the way, like, everybody else tells the retailers at the very least what's coming, and Games Workshop never did. Now this year, Games Workshop, when we went to the thing, which is this past spring, we went to it. It was very interesting. They didn't really talk about what was coming out next, but what they did for the entire hour of the seminar is they just asked all these retailers in the room what the retailers wanted. Like they just, like one of the guys sat there and wrote down, and the other guy just fielded questions and said, okay, what do you want us to do? Like, what do you want us to do marketing wise to help support you? What can we do to make it so you can sell more stuff and make more money for yourself and blah, blah, blah. Like, what can we do? That's a huge paradigm shift for Games Workshop to be asking questions. Like in the past, their seminars, they wouldn't take questions. The people in, the retailers would have questions, because they were angry about release schedules and this and that and the other thing. And they'd just be like, yeah, we're not really taking questions, but here's a PowerPoint about how to whatever. And so this year they were like, we need you to tell us what you want. And that was a very big shift for Games Workshop. And I think it's indicative of what's going on over the last 6 months. Just company-wide, we're seeing a lot of change, which is very interesting to me. We're seeing them, dipping their toe back into the internet. They asked people about the frequently asked questions. Rather than just putting out a frequently asked questions, they said, hey, what's your questions? And then after they got all those questions, they went through and answered a bunch of them, and then put those on Facebook and said, well, what do you think about these answers? Are these good, or should they be tweaked? Before they actually released the final document as a PDF. I was astounded. So yeah, I think that's really kind of interesting. And I think that I'm really looking forward to seeing how they kind of go forward in the future with that. Like, they were at Gen Con last year. They hadn't been to Gen Con in years and years and years and years. Like, way back when it was still Milwaukee. They used to be there every year, and then they hadn't been there for probably a decade. Well, they were there last year. They had 2 booths, actually. They had a Forge World booth and a booth that was mainly just showing off Age of Sigmar. So, yeah, I was pretty impressed. And I think that's good. And I think that a book like this, I think, is going to help with that stuff too. So let's go back and look at some of the things in the chat. The secrecy thing is silly. These games live and die by word of mouth. I agree. I think that their thought process was, if we're really quiet about it all the time, then people will get intrigued, and then they will ask all kinds of questions, and it will be like free marketing. But I think it really didn't do much more than just really annoy the retailers. Because honestly, I don't know how many times I've talked to retailers who are like, yeah, I didn't know about this new product coming out until someone came in and started telling me the leaks about it. Because, Games Workshop wouldn't tell me, my rep wouldn't tell me, so that's not super helpful. Let's see here. Let's see here. So what's next for Chaos, or for my Chaos? Painting Clan Pestilence Plague Monks, and also the Plague Claw Catapult. That is built, based, primed, base colored. It just needs to get all the detail and all that stuff and everything like that. So that's probably what's next for my particular Chaos. And then sometime after that, probably over the winter, I'm working on the Glotkin. He's still freaking me out a little bit because he's so big, and so I'm not sure about that yet. But let's see here. Let's see here. What other questions have we got? Helps that they've got a few podcasts in their pocket. I'm not sure what that's referring to. I know that they are actually starting to talk to podcasts now. I know that I was just listening to a podcast last night, Point Hammered, which is they're based out of Wisconsin area, and they are mainly a fantasy. They used to be mainly fantasy. They just basically talked about Warhammer Fantasy, and they mentioned when I was listening to it last night, they recorded in mid-July that they had received some packages from Games Workshop. Like Games Workshop mailed them some stuff, just like review copy stuff, which they did when when Age of Sigmar came out. The starter box got mailed to a lot of different podcasts. I have never received anything from Games Workshop, FYI. People say that, they're paying you, and I wish, honestly, but no, they've never sent me jack. So, which is weird, because for quite some time, I don't know if it's still the case, but for quite some time, if you typed Age of Sigmar into YouTube, my video came up first. The why Age of Sigmar is a good idea, or a good thing, or whatever. So, like, when I went to the developer or the distributors conference back in September, in the spring, I said to the guys in the Games Workshop booth, I'm like, we should talk, maybe do something, and whatever. And they were like, why is that? And I'm like, because my videos come up before yours when people search for your game on YouTube. And they were like, oh, okay, well, again, these are guys who work in the American office. I'm sure that the guys in the UK office make fun of the guys in the American office for reasons. But so, yeah, I don't know. I think that I was really glad to hear that they were working with like the Bad Diced podcast and Heel and Hammer and things like that on the points for General's Handbook. It's just another indicator of how they've been kind of getting out and looking at the community, which is something cool since they're actually trying to sell stuff and make money off the community. It's nice to communicate with your clients or customers. Anyway, let's see here. I want to do a Tomb Kings army. Besides the new Kings of War Undead Dynasties, are there any other Egypt Undead style mini-series out there? Oh gosh, there was a company that I think was called Avatars of War, or else War Gods of Egyptus, which was like spelled like Egypt, but with like extra letters in it, Egyptus. I would maybe try to do some searches for them. I don't know if you would get like regular troops, like regular ground troops, but you might get some sort of interesting hero type guys out of those guys. War Gods of Egyptus, I believe it was called. I don't remember if it started with an AE or if it just started with an E. But you might look into some of that. I remember that from years ago. You might have to end up getting some stuff on eBay. I don't know if they're still in business or not, but yeah. It amazed me when I was starting to look back into getting into tabletop how Games Workshop had zero public interaction. It's nice to see them start changing that approach, even if it's only a little. Yeah, I agree. For years, they were just completely ignoring the fact that there were people actually buying their product. And since the new guy's come along now as the CEO, Roundtree, I think his name is, I think you're starting to see some big changes because of that, and they finally understand that maybe they need to act like a company in the 21st century and start doing some of that stuff. And I think that that's a good thing. Let's see here. War Gods of Egyptus. See, I knew it started with an AE. That's Pygmalion. Yeah, that was it. Crocodile Games. Mantic has Egyptian Undead releasing soon. Mantic, it makes sense to me because when GW closes a door, Mantic opens a window. You know what I mean? Like, that's the way it works. Like, GW's like, we're not doing Tomb Kings anymore. We're going to cut that one down. And Mantic's like, really? Well, we'll do some then. And, God love them. You got to, it's it's interesting to see that kind of thing work out for them, and it'll be interesting to see how many people kind of jump ship, because the thing is that again, you could use them in Kings of War, so it's another good kind of gateway to moving into their game. But if you're like, but I'm just not going to play Kings of War, they'll be like, all right, well, you can still buy the models and use them for whatever you want. They don't care. So that's cool. Let's see. Do you think that they are doing that because they are going down in business? Well, we just had, about 45 minutes ago, someone mentioned that their overall sales, because they're a publicly traded company, that this information is publicly available, their sales have gone down over the last several years, which a lot of people, have realized. So when a company starts to see sales flag, they have to make changes. And one of the changes they did was to get rid of the old guy and get in a new guy. And that guy is making some changes by making it so that they actually act like a company from the 21st century. So yeah, I would say that a lot of these changes, I get the feeling that if their sales were flat or even going up, they wouldn't have bothered. Like, the guy would have been still running things the way he ran it, and they just would have kept on keeping on, because why not? You know, they were making their money. Well, when you start to see sales start to slow down or drop, you have to figure out how to fix it before it gets too out of hand. That's just the way business works. So, let's see here. If the new edition of 40K gets Sigmarified, that's a hard word to say, to some degree, would you take a look at going back to it? I had other people ask me the same question, or questions very much like it. I would be supremely surprised if, like, I don't think that they'll make 40K like Age of Sigmar. They certainly would not say, oh, here's the new rules, it's 4 pages, there's no points, have a good day. They would not do that. It wasn't a completely good PR move to do it the way they did it originally with Sigmar, so they're not going to do it with 40K, because 40K is their cash cow. That being said, they may streamline the heck out of 40K. They may go along the lines, I have heard rumors, you know, and you guys have probably heard the rumors if you look at the same websites. It's not like I know anybody at Games Workshop or anything like that, but I've read on, like, NAFCA, is that the guy's website? And looked at stuff sometimes at Bell of Lost Souls. There are rumors that they're going to do the same sort of Grand Alliance thing that Age of Sigmar is doing, where there will basically be Imperium, Chaos, good Xenos, and bad Xenos. I don't exactly know what those classifications are. I mean, you know, Imperium and Chaos are pretty easy, but who's a good Xeno, who's a bad Xeno? I guess good Xenos would probably be Tau and Eldar. Bad Xenos would be like Dark Eldar, Tyranids. The Tyranids are neither really good nor bad. They just want to eat everything. They're not doing it maliciously. They're just very hungry. Orcs, that kind of... So there's some talk about doing some of that and probably streamlining things. I don't know if they'll go to the same degree. I think it would be it would be a good idea to streamline it, but it would be a dumb idea to streamline it too much with 40K, because in my mind, Age of Sigmar is what is the gateway game that might bring you into tabletop wargaming if you've never been one before. And then if you play that and you're like, that's really cool, but I would like to maybe move into something a little sci-fi, or I'd like to move into something a bit more detailed, then you want to have 40K be the next level up. And if 40K is equal, then you're just going to have 2 gateways with nowhere to go to. You see what I'm saying? The benefit as well to having level 1 to some degree, being Age of Sigmar, and maybe level 2, if that's, you know, being 40K, is if you decided you want to move from level 1 to 40 to level 2, you have to buy all new models, unless you went, I guess, Chaos Demons. You know, if you're like, oh, I really like this tabletop stuff, it's really a lot of fun, I want to do some sci-fi stuff, well, now you got to go buy sci-fi stuff. So now you're buying twice as many models. See what I'm saying? If both of them are starter level, then you could just decide to go one or the other, and you may switch over because you just want to, but again, you may not. So, I don't know. The question is, will I switch back to 40K? I don't know. There's a benefit. I would like the fact, if it happened, I said to someone just recently that if it did happen, I might look at Adeptus Mechanicus or Skitarii. I think those models are really awesome, and if I could just play with maybe 20 or 30 of them max for my entire army, I'd maybe look into it. But I'm not sure yet. And again, who knows what we'll see. I've been saying for quite some time that this summer is when 8th is going to come out. It's August 1st tomorrow, so I've only got about another month left. I've also said recently, well, maybe it'll be early fall, so we'll see. But I don't know. It's interesting. That's one of the things that they're not really talking about. You know, like they'll talk about something like the General's Handbook, and they'll go on about, you know, like, oh yeah, this is coming out, and they talked about it for several months before it came out. But they're not. They're keeping it pretty close to the vest about whether or not 8th edition 40K is going to come out or not. And I think, honestly, part of that is because if you tell people way in advance, hey, we're coming out with a new edition of 40K, 40K sales will stop until that new edition drops, because people will be like, well, I'm going to wait for the new stuff. You know what I mean? So you have to kind of like watch out for that kind of jazz. So anyway, let me see here. I'm going to scroll back and see what's going on here. I really got into Sigmar because of the simplicity and not needing $2,000 army to have a real fun with your army if you want variety. Yeah, no, I agree. They just launched 5 new Get Starting Age of Sigmar box this weekend. Yeah, no, I've been adding a lot of that stuff, and that's been really cool. Oh, Gaddis Gaming, how you guys doing? I think it would be a great move to streamline 40K. Other games have moved on to better game design, and 40K is unnecessarily complicated. The way that they keep adding stuff to it over the last, that they have kept adding stuff over to it in the last 4 years has caused that. The allies thing, the way that they did it, and making the matrix of the different allies, that was, there was ways that you could really cheese things out there. And then after that, all the data slates and all that kind of stuff that was added in, the digital only codices, all this stuff made it really difficult to try to streamline it. And they were basically just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks and just having a good time. I mean, it was literally like for a while there, 40K was almost like open General's Handbook rules. Because, yeah, there were points, but like these guys at 500 points versus these guys at 500 points were wildly different in balance. So it was just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And that's what they were doing. I mean, they're just like, oh, here's another data slate that completely invalidates this and makes this problematic and this and this. And they were just doing it. Nothing was balanced. And everybody was complaining about it who was into tournaments and stuff like that. And so, yeah, now, with this, if they streamline things to try to make things more balanced, and it'll be a big project, and there will probably be much gnashing of teeth and rending of garments, but I think it's probably necessary. Again, like I said, I don't think they should go and make the game as simple or streamlined as Age of Sigmar, but I think streamlining it a lot would be very helpful. So yeah, let's see here. Scrolling. Oh geez, man! Some days they're going to fix this, and it'll be awesome. Let's see here, Brandon. I finally caught a live show. Well, congratulations. That's good. My buddy plays Admech and Skitarii. They are a very cool army. I don't honestly know much about the gameplay. I just think that they look awesome. So I'm that guy. Let's see here. The Chaos Box looks inviting. I bought a start collecting for my Warhammer Fantasy Battle army. They're a good deal. Which Chaos Box? Yes, 40K was open play, but there were rules canceling rules, making it a complete mess to play. Yeah, exactly. Like, they just kept coming out with all these data slates. Like, during a Christmas, I think it was a couple years ago, like, they had an advent calendar, and they put out a new data slate, like, every day of December, or something like that. Maybe I had a fever dream and that happened, but I think it actually happened in the real world. And, wow, I was just watching that stuff come out and going, that is going to make tournament organizers super duper unhappy. It was just weird. It was like each data slate was basically like a battalion for Age of Sigmar, but maybe a little bit more in depth. And it was just a lot of like, oh, if you play with these guys, and these guys, you get this super benefit that nobody else gets, and it just made things really difficult. At least now with the battalions in the point system for Age of Sigmar through the General's Handbook, you have to pay for those things. You can be like, oh, this and this and this and this. Well, yeah, that's great. You build that army to make that happen, but to get the battalion bonus, you have to actually pay 60 or up to 140 or whatever points. So there's that, yeah. Any information on other GW Specialist games like a return to 40K Epic? I swear I just recently heard that they were maybe going to be bringing Epic back. I don't know. I never played Epic, so I don't know much about it. But I swear I heard something about that. And it'll have, yeah, and Secrets of the Machine saying, I'm hearing Epic will return, but set during the Horus Heresy. Well, that'd be pretty cool, too. Any thoughts on Deadzone version 2? Sculpts can be a little stilted, but the rules seem great. I downloaded the rules for version 2 Deadzone because I backed the Kickstarter on the original, and they sent me an email. I think they sent everybody who was a Kickstarter, and they're like, hey, here's the new rules, download them if you want. So I did. And I've not had a good chance to read them. The rules look cleaner. Like, the problem that Mantic was having a couple years ago is that the rules, like for Deadzone and Dreadball, were just poorly laid out and difficult to find stuff in. And now their books, like, I bought Dungeon Saga a little while back, and everything in that looks amazing. The new Kings of War book, everything in it looks amazing. And I'm not just talking about pretty, but like clear, and you can understand. There's a user experience situation there where you're like, oh, well, the rules for this are near this, which makes total sense because they happen a lot together, or whatever, that kind of thing. So they're really stepping up their game that way. I'm interested in Deadzone. Like I said, I was in on the Kickstarter, and I've got a small plague group painted and a small enforcer group painted. I've got my terrain painted, but I just haven't read the new rules. But I do want to because I think it would be a lot of fun to play. And so yeah, definitely. Best way to paint Termagants is primed white, then Agrex Earthshade, then Evil Red Scarlet with a wash, red wash for the red. Yeah, I'm actually going to do a video soonish. I need to get some Tyranids, like maybe Gene Stealers, maybe Hormigons. I don't know. I need to get some like in my sweaty mitts, and I want to do a quick paint tutorial about them. There's going to be an Imperial Guard one that comes first. Those guys I have like actually ready to go, but I do want to do one about the. I'm just looking at some of these guys that I know an easy way to kind of get them done quickly. I did the skeleton one a while back. These guys are going to follow along the sort of the same lines, and so are the Imperial Guard ones. So yeah, but they can be done quickly. You just have to kind of plan well, and then once you do it, you stick to that plan. So yeah. Let's see here. Did you see the new core models released for Dark Age? Any plans on picking them up? I have not seen the new core models. Core is the army that I technically play for Age of Sigmar. I haven't played in quite some time, but I painted up a bunch of guys. You probably saw some of this stuff on some of my social about a year ago. But no, I haven't realized that they've released new core stuff. I like those guys. I'll have to take a look because some of the models are just amazing. Pathfinder's really cool. Thumper's really cool. I'm trying to think of the other ones. I can't think of the names of the other ones. But yeah, a bunch of them are really cool, so I'll have to take a look at that. Let's see here. Played my first game of Mark III the other week. Evil Eyeball. I won because my opponent's dice failed him. Well, that happens a lot, actually. I'd like to get in and try a game. The downside is that, like I said, I don't really know a ton of people around here that play War Machines, so it's hard to find a demo. I mean, I could go down to Milwaukee, I suppose. I know people down there, but yeah, I'm not sure. And Adepticon's like really far away time-wise. Like it's not till spring of next year, so yeah, I would like to play a demo though and try out some of the new stuff and see. I was hoping to get a demo when I went to that thing in Madison, that distributors conference, but I just got I talked to guys from Privateer Press, but when the big demo thing happened after dinner on Thursday night, the Privateer Press table was always full, so I didn't get a demo of that. I did get a demo of Guild Ball, and that was really cool, but I did not get a demo of the new War Machines / Warma Hordes, if you want to call it that way. So yeah, let's see here. Hello, Uncle Adam. Hello. So yeah, to wrap up about the General's Handbook, I think that the thing that's the most interesting about it is the fact that it exists. So when they released Age of Sigmar, I don't know if they had plans to a year later make the General's Handbook. I really don't think that was their plan. When they did this, they were like, let's try this whole new thing, and just went boom and dumped everything out there. And then they actually listened to feedback. Granted, a lot of it was slightly hysterical, people burning their armies in the driveway with lighter fluid. But for the most part, it was people just saying, I'm not going to play this game because it doesn't have any points, and I just don't get it. And there are other people who were like, I'm cool with it not having any points. But there was a lot of people saying, I want more from it. And I think that they actually listened to that and then said, okay, cool, so people want more from it, so I guess we should do more. And then they did, and they, sell this book. A book of this size, this doesn't happen overnight. This is not something that you do in a weekend. This is a lot of work. I mean, as a person who is a photographer, just setting up these humongous, it's very difficult to get, just setting up all these humongous battles and all these things, this is a lot of work. So they had to have all that stuff going on while they were also working on this is actually, this part's a painting, this part down here is a photograph. They had to do a lot of that stuff, go through all that stuff, write everything. Probably, I assume they did some play testing. I have to admit, I have not played a game yet with points since the thing's only been out a week. I don't know if it's... I get the feeling, from what I understand, they worked with the Heel and Hammer guys and the South Coast GT rules, and they did some tweaks and things like that, but they worked with them. So I'm pretty sure there was a lot of playtesting, or at least some, more than they have done in the past for a while. So there was playtesting and things like that based off of this. So, but they did, I think, hustle to get this stuff going because they were concerned that people were, I don't even know if it was concerned, they were reacting to what people were saying. people were saying, we don't want to play this necessarily because it's got points, or it doesn't have points. And so they decided to make this, and then, again, they made it optional because they also were hearing from people like myself that were like, I don't really need points. So, you know, I think that if we start to see more of this kind of stuff, and businesses, they need to be reactive to their customers, but they need to not also be reactive to every customer. There's a thing in business where you think about, it's an analogy to farming. I guess when you're plowing a field, you pay attention to the fence posts on the end of the field and you point towards that fence post, which is your goal. But you don't look at the ground, because then your rows will be all curvy because you'll be reacting to every little thing. But when enough things come at you, you have to, like if there's a tree, you're going to have to react to that. And the tree might have been a lot of people saying, I'm not going to play Age of Sigmar without points. So they reacted to that, and we got this book over here. But when one person emails in and says, oh, I don't like this, and I think the tree people look funny, or whatever the problem might be, you can't just immediately like, okay, well, we'll fix that, we'll fix this, and we'll fix that, because then, you know, that's just not a way a business can really work. So, but what they were doing before was they were just staring at that fence post, and that tree was looming in the middle of the row that they were hoeing, and then they were about to hit it. So in this situation, they were, you know, I think that it's good that they finally are being a little reactive, but without getting crazy. So yeah. Let's see here. My friendly local game store has been really focused on Age of Sigmar. It looks fun, but I don't see the issues people complain about. But I was stuck between Space Marines and Tyranids, more for lore and aesthetics. I'm a big fan of building, or, you know, picking your army based off of lore and aesthetics. I really am. For me, it's mainly aesthetics. Lore is like, yeah, I'm not super big into lore. For me, honestly, just the way they look is one of the biggest things for me. But I'm artsy fartsy, so there you get that. Deathwatch Space Marines are the next 40K release. Really? I thought because they had that box, the Operation Overkill or whatever, and they were Deathwatch Space Marines in there, but I suppose that's something. Let's see here. Darren says, by the way, I've really enjoyed this live stream. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad people are enjoying it. I enjoy doing it. Like I said, it's every other Sunday, 9 a.m. Central Time here in America. Your times may vary because you may live far away. So I don't know what that is in GMT. It's either 5 hours off or 6, depending on daylight savings. I don't know. About 6-7 years ago, we messed up our daylight savings here, and it doesn't match up with everybody else in the world. So, you know, look on the webpage, look on Facebook, and you'll find out the link, and then you can it will work from there. But yeah, every other Sunday. So the next one will be not this upcoming Sunday, but the Sunday after. It'll be post Gen Con? ? Yes, because Gen Con is not this upcoming weekend. No, it is. I have to look at the calendar. Hang on a second. Let's see here. So today is the 31st. Yeah. The next, wow, Gen Con's this upcoming Thursday. Holy crap. Those of you who are going to Gen Con, FYI, it's coming up on Thursday. So, yeah. So it'll be the weekend after Gen Con. So there will be some news. I won't be at Gen Con, like I said, but maybe some of you will. I know Matthew, who's been in here, he's going. So, yes, it is this upcoming weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. And it'll be interesting to see. So, yeah. Anyway, so that's pretty much about it. I don't know if you guys got any other questions. Oh, wait. Been working on a prototype for a tile-based tactics game for around 6 months now. Any tips on starting to branch out from friendly playtests to more strangers and players? I guess I'd tell you to go to your local shop and then start looking for local conventions. Local conventions, and by local I might mean as many as 100 to 200 miles away. You have to drive a bit, stay over, overnight. But you can get some definite playtesting and show off some stuff at local conventions. Local conventions always want more events. They always want more stuff to play, more people to run things. So if you show up and let them know it's a demo and it's a playtest, you'll get people that will be interested because they're interested in maybe game design in general, or they're just interested in playing something new or whatever. But that's probably one of your best ways to get people like that. So yeah. So that'll be cool. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. All right. Well, thanks to everybody for coming in and hanging out. And I hope that if you're interested in Age of Sigmar, I kind of hope that you go out and get the General's Handbook if you're interested in that kind of stuff. If you and your friends have already started doing a lot of the things that maybe are in here, like you've started to make your own narrative campaigns, or you've started to make your own special house rules, or you came up with, you were using some other point system. There were lots of other point systems that came out over the last year that people worked on. I have a suspicion that a lot of them now will kind of switch over to this and kind of go away, because they're going to be, this will be seen as more official and more people will be on the same page with that. But you know, if I think it's a good book, and it's at $25, it's totally really reasonable. So anyway, but that's pretty much it. I gotta probably go out and mow the lawn soon, so that'll be fun. There's no, you know, I can't pick my army for that. It's just pretty much I got to use a lawnmower. There's no special. I could get a different lawnmower, I guess, but I could paint my lawnmower, but I think the neighbors would think it was weird. So I guess that's pretty much it. All right. Everybody else, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. You'll see another video this upcoming Friday during Gen Con. Again, I will not be at Gen Con, but you'll see a video about stuff that will be gaming related. Maybe I don't think it'll be Gen Con related. I know some people that are going, so maybe I guess I could get some information, but we'll see how it goes. All right, that's pretty much it. Have a good day, and thanks a lot.